All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another wild and woolly edition of Torah Studies. The objective of this class, as we know, is to explore the Torah portion, the weekly parsha, from a deep level, really to take a deep dive. And oftentimes, for those that have been in these classes before, hey Sandrine, good to see you. Just started, perfect timing. So oftentimes what we do in these classes is explore the deeper meaning of Torah using the lens of Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism as expounded in Chassidut, in Hasidic philosophy. And today is one example of this. Today, here we go. Good to see you. So today, what we're going to do is explore a law, one of the teachings of Torah, in the simple halachic way, as well as in a deeper way to make it very personal and very relevant. Okay, the theme today, this evening, is loneliness. I sent out an email. By the way, if you're not on the email list, let me know. I think everyone here is on the email list. But if not, just somehow get a hold of me and let me know, and I'll get you on the email list. Here's the point. Topic today is loneliness. And as I wrote in the email, I think we are living in a very paradoxical time. On the one hand, and Tob and I were talking about this before. On the one hand, we're more connected than ever. I mean, think about it. You can pull out a phone, and you can pull up, I don't know, you can pull up a text message and communicate with anyone around the world. You can pull out WhatsApp and another text message, and you can have a video call, and you can an audio call, the whole deal. You know, you FaceTime and Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat. TikTok only for perhaps a limited time only. I don't know exactly how long that's going to last for. The point is that we can all instantly connect pretty much with anybody that we'd like to. That's just the way the world has evolved. And I think in many ways we can call this era the communication era, or the age of communication, where communication is so easy. And yet at the same time, I think that it has not necessarily eased senses of loneliness, where you could have people that are right next to each other, people that are communicating with each other, and yet they don't necessarily feel close. And we know, huh?
Look at Zoom.
Or Zoom.
You're on Zoom instead.
Right. So we got Zoom, we got exactly, we got right. Everyone local is invited to join in person. Exactly. The point is that you have this duality of this, how do you call it, paradox, but it's a very interesting dichotomy where you have tools of communication like never before, and yet we're not necessarily closer than ever before. And it could be that people feel lonely. It's an easy demographic to talk about when we talk about the youth, teenagers, who grew up with devices, grew up with smartphones and other devices. Hey, Yaakov, good to see you. So, teenagers that grew up with communication at their fingertips, and yet do they always feel connected? Do they always feel right? Or does it feel sometimes lonely? And so today we're going to explore the topic of loneliness from a Jewish perspective, from a Torah perspective. As we'll see, Torah has a lot to say about loneliness, as well as something very surprising to say about loneliness. But the good news is, as we start tonight, we're not alone. Look at this.
So much less alone.
See, so much less alone now that we're all here. Exactly. So here we go.
They share a drink they call loneliness, but it's better than drinking alone.
Oh, is that nice? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to jump into a few texts from the Torah, and as we'll see, it's going to talk about a seemingly unrelated topic, and then we'll swing it back in. Actually, the truth is, we're going to first talk about a very related topic, and then get to the unrelated, and then get back to related. All right, so we're going to start with text number 1. You guys have this in front of you. Sandrine, if you don't mind, give me just a quick moment, and I'll share my screen, and then we'll get you started. By the way, how nice is this air conditioning? No? It's nice.
Quiet.
Tonight,
It's nice.
it's kicking in. It's quiet, but it's also powerful. Give me a second. Let me find where this is. I'm going to pull it up. Hold on. Here we go. Now we are talking. Okay. Text number 1, Sandrine, please take it away.
God said, "It's not good for man to be alone. I will make for him a helper alongside him."
It's very interesting that this verse comes from Genesis 2:18, chapter 2, verse 18, because it's one of the first things that we're told about the human condition. I mean, really, think about it. Like, we don't know much. This is before the commandment to not eat from the forbidden fruit. This is before the tree of knowledge of good and evil, becomes a big thing. This is God saying, when it comes to the human condition, it's not good for man to be alone. And God says, I'm going to solve the problem. We're going to make another person. And then Adam will have someone to talk to. Namely, in this context, of course, Eve. You guys with me? This is the antidote to loneliness, is having another person. So clearly, just as we start today's discussion, it's very clear that loneliness is a challenge. It's a challenge to the human condition, number one. Number two, Torah acknowledges the problem. God says, hey, I see this is a challenge. Let me try to help. But number three, even with other people around and even with other people within our reach, it sometimes can feel a little lonely. Now, we're going to now segue away from the topic of loneliness to a seemingly unrelated topic, the topic of biblical servitude. Now, I need to make a disclaimer. If you've been to my classes before, you know this disclaimer is one that we've said before. The concept of servitude in Torah is not like the slavery that we know or that we've known. It's more of an indentured servitude. There are very specific contexts in which this was applied. So let me give you a very quick halachic overview about the laws of servitude. Basically, we're talking about a situation where a person, for whatever reason, has fallen on very hard times. The person cannot pay their bills. The person perhaps stole money and cannot repay it, or otherwise is in debt, and basically is out of luck when it comes to cash. There is an option, and this is, again, biblically mandated conceptually. I'm not saying that anyone's putting this into practice, but conceptually, there's this concept where a person could engage themselves or enter themselves into this indentured servitude, whereby they are selling, as it were, their work for a certain amount of time for a certain amount of money. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't this a job? Like, what? Just get a job. Like, what's the difference? You go get a job, you'll get paid, and you'll get money to pay back the debt. The difference between a job and this servitude, this is very important, is that this type of servitude, you get the money up front. Are you with me on this? In other words, you sell yourself or you sell your service. You're basically saying, I will work for you for the next X amount of time. I get a lump sum that I can use that to pay off whatever I need to pay off. And now I owe you my work. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's the concept. Again, you could get a job, an hourly wage, a daily wage, a weekly wage, a monthly wage. And obviously that's always an option. In a case where it's not an option, here's another option. Let's read these verses in Torah. Yaakov, please take it away. Just give me one quick second. Let me pull this up on the screen. And please read text number 2 from our Torah portion of Behar.
If your brother shall become poor among you and is sold to you as a servant, you shall not work him as a slave. As a hired servant and a resident of your area, he shall be with you. He shall work with you until the Jubilee year. Then he shall go out from you, he and his children with him. He shall return to his family and to the possession of his fathers.
Okay, so let's break this down. This is like the critical text of today's class, so we might as well spend a minute on it. So number one, like I told you, I didn't make this up. The Torah is talking about a very specific scenario. The Torah is not saying, oh, people should be servants. There should be this idea of indentured servitude as a norm. That is not at all what the Torah is saying. The Torah is saying very specifically, look at verse 39. If your brother shall become poor among you. It's a very specific scenario of severe destitution, whatever the right word is, where somebody is severely destitute and they cannot pay, and there's a very pressing need for cash. So then there is this option to be sold as a servant. But the first thing the Torah says after describing the scenario, the first legal note is, Lo ta'avod bo avodat aved. You shall not work him as a slave. and you're thinking, what? I just got myself a servant. I shouldn't work him as a slave. The answer is no. No, he can do work for you, but there's no slavery. Ray, yeah. Hold on, you gotta unmute. Hold on, Ray, you gotta hit the unmute button.
What's
Yep,
the difference between that and an organization like Chifla, which was created for that purpose? They give you the money up front and you.
Oh, Ray's asking.
What is the difference?
JIFLA, the Jewish Interest-Free Loan
Association
locally. And you're right, because there are, what's the word I'm looking for? Interest-free loans. It's a Jewish thing to do that. I guess we're talking about a situation where the destitution is so severe. Maybe this person already did the JIFLA, as it were. Maybe they already took the loans and they had to pay back without the interest that, and they couldn't pay those. In other words, we're talking about a case. This is a last resort. So picture all of the other resorts. Now I'm thinking about Disney. No, I'm kidding. Think about all the other resorts that are possible, right? And think of this as the absolute last resort, where a person is going to this extent of saying, I no longer control my time. That's it. You control my time. I take a lump sum and I'm going to work for you for the next amount of time. So it's a very sad situation. Hopefully no one would ever be in this situation. The Torah is saying here's a mechanism in case it's necessary. But even when it's necessary, Torah doesn't have to tell people to employ other people, right? The Torah has to tell people that when you do this, you can't oppress the other person. That's the emphasis of the Torah's message. People will come up with the institution of servitude on their own. The Torah doesn't have to give us good ideas about how people can get people to work for them and gain, give and take. The Torah needs to tell us how not to oppress the weak or the impoverished. So that's what the Torah is telling us. If a situation where there's extreme poverty and there's this need for a person to be a servant, you can't work him as a slave. It's not telling you take slaves, take servants, this should be a thing. It's saying if this happens, worst case scenario, you have to treat this person with respect. But yeah.
So if this person buys this servant, then he still has then he has to pay him. So why would he even buy a servant if he would have to pay him again, or is he getting him at a discount?
He doesn't have to pay him. He has to take care of him, but he doesn't get a paycheck. He doesn't pay him a paycheck. Are you with me? I'll pull the text back up on the screen. You're asking an excellent question. It's very important to understand what the Torah is saying and what it's not saying. What it's saying is like this. This is a person who's severely destitute. We're not recommending this as a course of action. We're saying that if this is done, it has to be done in a kosher way. You cannot set this up for human rights abuses. This is not going to be cool. God says not okay. So in this extreme situation, notwithstanding the need, you shall not work him as a slave. That's point number one. Now, as to is there compensation? Answer is no. But okay, so this is going to get into the next piece of what I wanted to say. Here's the deal. What does it mean to not work him as a slave? You know what it means? As Rashi comments and as others comment, as the Talmud discusses, what it means is you can't give this person demeaning work. You can't give this person pointless work. You can't tell them, oh, take this package from here to there, and then tell them, oh, you know what? I actually need it back. Don't imagine they're working for you full time. They basically live in help. They're living with you. All right. That's the context of this indentured servitude. They live literally with you. The point is, you can't take advantage of that. You can't take advantage of the vulnerability. You can't take advantage of your alleged power. And I use air quotes, and I said it very, like the way I said it, because the Torah wants us to recognize that every human being has value. We cannot have a situation where we're setting ourselves up for abuse, whether to be or to abuse others. So that's the big idea. If you have, famously the Talmud says, if you have only one meal, only one item of food, you have to give it to your servant. If you have one pillow, you have to give it to your servant. In other words, you can't live with a standard of living and have the servant inferior. I mean, it doesn't mean they have to have necessarily all the amenities, etc., but basic, decent amenities they have to have, and you can't withhold that. It's not okay to withhold that. That's the message here.
But Yaakov asked if you get paid, but
No.
But you do get. You said you get. He gets paid at the beginning.
Yes.
So he does get.
Yes. Well, that's
So-
what he was asking. Did you get paid at the beginning and during? No. So you get paid at the
Oh.
beginning. Yeah, you get the lump sum in the beginning,
But then
Then-
you don't get it.
but then you get taken care of.
Yeah.
So you don't get paid, but you have a place to live.
Yeah.
Your clothing is taken care of. Your food is taken care of. Okay, which leads us to the next. Again, we're just breaking down this
lump
text.
sum goes to the servant or to
Yes.
the
Well, to the servant to then pay
His-
the creditors, right? Whoever this person owes money to. I don't know if it passes through, if it goes directly. I don't know whatever the arrangement is, but yeah, this is
So why would someone pay twice? They would pay for the servant and they would pay a salary versus just paying someone a salary.
no, it's not paying a salary.
I mean, a lump sum salary. Lump sum.
No. You're paying up front a lump sum, and then there's no salary.
Okay, so it's less than a salary.
It's not.
Is it less? I don't know if it's
Number
less or more. It's structured differently. I'm not sure if it's less or more money at the end, but it's structured differently. Instead of paying them as they go, they need the money now. So it's upfront. Now let's break down the rest of this text because again, it's important. So again, the first thing that we know is the scenario. It's only in a case of severe destitution. We also know you can't work him as a slave. In other words, this is not now licensed to do whatever you want. That's not cool. The next verse, again, we're just breaking this down. A hired servant, okay? He shall, as a hired servant or as a resident of your area. In other words, you got to treat him like a resident, treat him like a member of the family. Now, the next thing, he shall work with you until the Jubilee year. We understand that to mean not necessarily the Jubilee year, but until the sabbatical year. Jubilee, so as we know, every 7 years was the sabbatical year. It's known as the Shemitah year. Every 50 years, 7 sabbaticals is the Jubilee year, the Yovel year. Either way, the bottom line is that typically at the sabbatical year, the tenure or the term of servitude would end. The 7 year was not a 7 year cycle of the individual. It was an objective 7 year cycle. So it's kind of like, if the servant needs money in year 3, so they're obviously going to structure the payment, the lump sum at the top, because they're not going to work for 7 years. They're only going to work for whatever, till the 7th year, another 3 years or whatever. So obviously that's going to be structured and figured out. But comes the year of Shemitah, the sabbatical year, you go free. If the servant is enjoying it so much that he wants to stay on, he could. This is not here. This is elsewhere in Torah. But then his ear gets pierced. Either way, there's a whole other law regarding if the servant's having such a good time working for this person, they want to stay on. Either way, the max is until the Jubilee year. That's why it says here until the Jubilee year, because even if you up, the consent of the servant is to continue this term. It can maxes out at the Jubilee year. Either way, let's continue. Verse 41. I'm just explaining the verses. And this is gonna lead to the question of today's class. Verse 41. Then he shall go out from you, he and his children with him. In other words, after the term ends, then he's free, he goes home. He shall return to his family, to his possessions of his fathers. Seems very straightforward. But the sages in the Talmud, we'll see in a moment, Toby, you'll read this, but in just one moment, they're going to wonder, what does it mean? He shall go out for you, he and his children with him. Since when were his children servants? We didn't say that. No one. What kind of scenario is that? We said if a person needs money, they can become a indentured servant or whatever the right word is, a live-in servant. But then at the end, he and his children go. Children? What's with the children? So take a look. Tova, please read text number 3 from the Talmud.
Our sages taught, then he shall go out from you, he and his children with him. Rabbi Shimon said, if he was sold, were his sons and daughters sold? From here, we see that his master is obligated to provide sustenance for his children. You say something similar with regard to the verse. If he is married, then his wife shall go out with him. Rabbi Shimon said, if he was sold, was his wife sold? From here, we see that his master is obligated to provide sustenance for the servant's wife.
Thank you. So let's leave the second paragraph aside. It's saying the same thing, but it's from a different verse in Exodus. And honestly, that's not our verse. So let's just stick with the first one. The question we had on text number 2 was, what does it mean that at the end of the term, he goes out, he and his children? What is he and his children? Where do the kids come? Like, they weren't in to go out. They were never servants. So Rabbi Shimon, spoiler alert, who's Rabbi Shimon? You guys know Rabbi Shimon? Lag BaOmer is coming up, right? It's a celebration of the life and legacy of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Rashbi. So this is our Lag BaOmer class also. You get a twofer. This is Behar and Lag BaOmer, right? This is wild. So Rabbi Shimon, the famous Rabbi Shimon, the holy sage of the Talmud and the Zohar, Kabbalah, the guy who spent years in a cave, that guy. Long story. We'll talk about that another time. But Rabbi Shimon says, he asked the question, if he sold, were his children sold? Why? They also go free. They also go out. What does it mean they go out? They were never in to go out. What's his answer? His answer is very subtle. From here, we see that his master is obligated to provide sustenance for his children. You know what that means? That means that as long as this guy was a servant, the householder who had the servant was obligated to provide not only the food and clothing of the servant, but he had to also take care of the family as well, the kids also, even though the kids had nothing to do with the arrangement. Listen to this. Yaakov, this now addresses your question. What's he on the hook for? There's a lump sum at the beginning, and then what? And I said, well, food and clothing, basic survival needs. But not only him, also his children. That's why the Torah says in text 2 that when this guy leaves, when he goes home, who leaves? He and his children. In other words, there's no longer the burden on the one who purchased the servant. There's no longer the burden to take care of the children. That's why it means they go free. In other words, there's no longer the obligation. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
And in 49, it says, if your brother shall become. So
Yeah.
it on, in the case.
Primarily talking about a Jewish, situation where a fellow brother is falling on hard times, etc. Yeah, that's the primary case. But remember, this was addressed obviously to the Jewish community, so it's no wonder that it's going to talk about that scenario. But again, here's the major idea, and this is what Rabbi Shimon is teaching, is that when a person makes this arrangement and gets the servant, they also acquire the the responsibility of the children as well. That's the big idea. Okay? The question is why? I just took responsibility for this guy. What do I have to do with the kids? Are you with me on the question? Why should the person who gets the servant, why should they be on the hook for the children?
Right.
Yeah. The Torah says that you are on the hook, but the question is why? Let's question that from a logical place. What is the rationale for that obligation? So again, let's go back to our text. We have a beautiful puzzle pieces coming together. Text number 4. This is the Ritva. Who's the Ritva? You got to love the Ritva. The Ritva is known as one of the Rishonim. The Rishonim were the early medieval times, the early commentaries, sages on the Talmud. So there's the Mishnah. This is all part of the oral tradition of Torah. You have the Mishnah, and then you have the Talmud, and then later on you have the Rishonim, the early commentaries. Some of the Rishonim of famous note: Rashi, one of the Rishonim; Rambam, Maimonides, one of the Rishonim; Rashba, Ramban, and Ritva, and others. These are all from that era. So here is the Ritva, text number 4. Look what he writes. We can argue that inasmuch as every man is assumed to sustain and support his wife and children, the Torah doesn't wish for them to be harmed because of their father's sale. This compels the masters to sustain and support them. For it is evident in God's eyes that had this man not been sold, he would have supported his family. Therefore, the master is obliged to supply them with food and clothing. So the Ritva says something pretty basic. He says, look, it's not the kid's fault that their father came on hard times and had to put himself in this type of arrangement situation to get the money to pay back his dad. And now his basic needs, he's not getting a paycheck, but his basic needs are taken care of. But who's going to take care of the kids, right? So why should the kids be neglected because the father is in a difficult bind? So therefore, the Torah says, okay, so you took the servant, now you're on the hook for the kids as well. Make sense? Yeah, the father's gone. Who's going to take care of the kids? Got to take care of the kids. I'll be honest. I hear it. It's more of an emotional explanation. Are you guys with me? It's more of an emotional explanation. I don't know if that makes sense as a logical explanation. And the question is, what is the legal or logical construct by which this works? Like, why is it that, here you have a servant, so you give him money, you take care of him, you give him money up front, then you take care of him, but then you're also on the hook for the children just because there's no other option? I mean, yeah, sure. There's a concept of tzedakah. You're taking care of those that are in need. But where is this? Where is this? So I want to share with you an incredible insight. It's a bit mind-blowing, I think. And we'll see how this applies to other situations. The premise of this idea is that Torah is telling us about a different perspective on how to view parents and children. Listen to this. Parents and children in Torah are not considered to be two separate entities. There's the parents, and then you have the children. Or here, in this case, the father and the kids. The children and the parents are, in essence, one entity. Does that make sense? In other words, there is an inherent bond between parent and child, which means that the moment you're responsible for the parent, in this case, the man who sold himself into servitude, the moment you're responsible for the parent, you're also automatically responsible for the child, because the child is part of the parent and the parent is part of the child. Does that make sense? In other words, it's not as if there's a parent and then gap and a child. And so I'm on the hook for this guy. Why should I be on the hook for those kids? I don't have a relationship with those kids. Torah says there's no gap. The children and the parent, in this case, the father, they're really one entity. And if they're one entity, the moment you have a liability, you have an obligation, take care of the father, you also have the obligation to take care of the child. Does that make sense? Yeah. It speaks to the bond between parent and child. We find this in regards to the laws of property and inheritance. And I want to start this example with a bit of a provocative case. Do you remember the Menendez brothers from back in the day? Kyle, Lyle.
Killed their parents?
They killed their parents, yeah. They were in California, San Diego, LA, somewhere. What? Wait. They killed it. Well, I don't know what they claimed, but they were found guilty of double homicide, I believe. They claimed abuse, correct. The prosecution claimed, that was a defense. Prosecution claimed that they killed the parents to inherit the estate. And they are, at least last time I checked, they're locked up. I think they were appealing, or maybe they're up for parole. I'm not sure. Everyone can, I don't know. Listen, we live in the information age. Everyone can fact check this. But they were definitely convicted of homicide, both brothers. Here's the interesting thing.
Because they had planned it. It wasn't like
passion. Exactly.
They put a lot of thought into this.
And this is, again, so I am not the judge. I am not the jury. I don't know what happened. I don't know I didn't see the evidence firsthand. So I can't weigh in on the case. I can only tell you that this is what the prosecution said. This is what the conviction was, and that's it. But I want to point out one more thing. And that is, in the US legal system, since these kids were convicted of their parents' murder, guess what? They didn't inherit
their parents' money.
Their parents' money. Correct. In other words, we say that if that happens, the first thing you lose is what you were trying to gain. Like, if that's your objective, well, then that's not going to work. It's not like they're sitting behind bars, but they have a great portfolio waiting for them because of this estate. That is, huh?
Because they're not buying it, so.
Because they're not buying it, so right? No, it is. Now the question is, who got it? Who got it? The state got it. The government got it. Probably the state got it, but definitely they did not get it. Do you know that in Jewish law, and this case is discussed as a concept, not as an actual, a true crime case, but in Jewish law, you know what the halacha, what the law would be, the ruling would be? They're liable for murder and whatever punishment that entails.
They still get
but they inherit. You know why? Because in halacha, there's two separate discussions. There's the criminal, and then there's the other piece of it, the inheritance law. Two totally separate realities. We don't mix. And basically, it goes even deeper, because inheritance is not something that the courts create. It's something in Jewish law that is natural. And it goes back to what I said before. Parents and children are intertwined. When you talk about inheritance, it's not as though, imagine this, I'm going to use a scenario with two water bottles. It's like you have person A, parent, person B, you have the child. So parent and child, forget A and B, parent and child. And the parent has resources or stuff. And then, parent passes away. You imagine, don't worry, it's not open. It pours down into this person B, and they, the child, and they get the inheritance. That's not how it works. In halacha, and we see this in the halachic discussion, Jewish legal discussion, it's that the inheritance, the estate, as it were, doesn't move from parent to child. It stays where it is. The child is in the place of the parent. Does that make sense? It's not as though the assets move. Now, they may switch bank accounts. That's on a technical, that's a technicality. But the assets don't move from one part to the other. The child assumes literally the place of the parent, and the parent to child, because there's this essential connection. And so that is the Jewish or the Torah's take on the relationship between parents and children. Text 5a, Sandrine, please read this one. 1 second, let me pull it up on the screen as well. And let's jump into this. This is, but again, another Talmudist explaining the idea of inheritance.
We view the child as if they perpetuated their parents' being. Therefore, for example, Jacob would precede Abraham in inheriting Isaac's property, because in Jacob's presence we see his father Isaac as if he yet lived. Look
at this. Imagine you have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Imagine all three are alive. And imagine Isaac, who's, the second. Imagine he passes away. Where does the inheritance go? Where does the estate go? Up to his father or down to his son?
Down.
You with the question? The answer is down. Why? Because a child carries on the legacy of the parent. And it flows, it naturally flows. But more than flows, the idea is that the child really takes the space of, Rashi. There we go, text 5b. Look at what Rashi says, Sandrine.
Children stand in place of their parents, and it is as if their parents yet live.
Look at that. That's a powerful statement. Children take the place of their parents, and it's like nothing changed. It's like the parents still live. There's continuity there. So the point of this is that a child and a parent and a child are in a very close relationship. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, this explains the law in our initial case, when a person has to, God forbid, sell himself into servitude, and we say that the person that has the servant is on the hook to take care of him, his food and his clothing, but also the children. And we asked before, why? And we said, well, who else is going to do it? And then I said, well, that's an emotional answer, but give me a legal answer. The legal answer is because in halacha, a child is not a separate entity from the parent, which means if you're taking care of the parent, you have to also take care of the child. How could, let me do some gesticulations to bring out the point, because it works better with hands, right? What's the point? The point is, how could you fathom that the person can say, what do you mean? I took care of the servant. I gave him food, I gave him clothing. If the kids don't have, then you didn't take care of the parent. Does that make sense? You understand the logic? If the kids don't have what they need, then guess what? You also didn't take care of the parent, because the parent and the child are so intertwined. Yeah? Yep. Let's see how the Rebbe says this.
The opposite way.
Like, you can't take care of the parent if you can't take care of the child if you didn't take care of the parent. I would say the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. How could a child say, oh, I'm good if the parent doesn't have it? It's the same thing, right? Parents and children are so connected that one without the other, it's not as sufficient. It's not considered taken care of. Now let's read this inside. It's really beautiful. Yeah, Ellen, jump in.
Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe this is a digression. What about if a child does not marry a Jew? Is there any halachic thing there, or that's a question of personal?
That's a good question, huh? If the child doesn't marry a Jew, or do they? Is it a difference?
All within the realm of Judaism, or?
That's a good question. We would have to look at the specific. Well, I mean, it depends what you ask. If you're asking on any other level other than a technical level, then the answer is there's no difference. If you're asking on a technical level, like within the laws of inheritance, does that change anything? My guess would be no. I don't see any reason why it would. But I feel hesitant to actually make a statement about Jewish law without having the source up in front of me. So I can't definitively say, one way or the other, but it doesn't seem to me that there would be much of a difference. A child and a parent are still bound inherently. In other words, like no matter what a child does, the DNA is still there. It's like when you undo the DNA. I mean, it's literally that connection. Vlad, jump in. Oh, Sandrine, jump in.
And I think it's like taking care of the children as they are dependent.
Yeah. Oh, right. And Sandrine's saying something else that, in the context of this original law, this is talking about if the kids are dependents. Obviously, if they're adults, then the master wouldn't be on the hook for the kids. That would be a different scenario. Okay, Vlad, jump in.
How does wife then fit into this equation then? It says you have to take care of wife and children. So does that mean wife in place of the husband?
The implication, and I glossed over that before because I said, well, let's focus on the first paragraph. The first thing that Rabbi Shimon said, this was text, I want to say 2, maybe. No, this was text number 3. You're right. If it's, the Torah says the same thing is true with the wife, that the fellow who has a servant is on the hook for the wife as well. And when he goes free, his obligation to her also ends. In other words, the one who had the servant doesn't have to pay food or clothing for the wife, for this servant's wife. It would seem like that's another similar situation. Like you can't take care of him without taking care of her. If they're so intertwined that what would it mean to say that the servant would never say, oh, I'm good if his wife is not good. He would never say, oh, I'm good if his kids are not good. So to take care of him means to take care of them. It's one and the same. It's a package deal. That's what we're saying. It's a package deal. Let's read this inside. Yaakov, if you don't mind, please read text number 6. This is the one in which kind of the Rebbe ties these ideas together and articulates what I just said.
This explains why the master is obligated to support the servant's children. It is due to their association with the father, just as he is obligated to support the father, the servant. So too, he is obligated to feed the part of the father that exists in his children.
There we go. All right. So that's the big idea. Parents, children are all one and the same, pretty much. And this is reflected in Jewish law and the obligation to take care of the kids. We're going to skip text 7. That's a tangent. We're going to skip text 7 and move on to where it gets interesting. Now, all of this was interesting, but all of this was a bit technical and legal. And also, we talk about parents and children and legacy and all this inheritance. So fascinating stuff. But like we've discussed in almost every week or every week, this, Torah can be understood on different levels. And there's the simple legalistic way of understanding things, technical way of understanding things. But then there is the deeper way of understanding things. And what we're going to do now is take this law about servants and support and parents and children and now move it into a much broader way of understanding it, not in the context of this specific situation, but on a personal level, but as well as a national level and a historic level. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. Because what we're about to do is say that what is the meaning of destitution and servitude? This is an allusion, or this is a reference to Jewish suffering, or more specifically, Jewish exile. Let's take a look at text number 8. This is unbelievable. What we're about to do is actually unbelievable. We're about to read the Or HaChaim, who I love. This is a commentary from the 1700s, the 18th century, from a mystic who lived in Israel. And the Or HaChaim, he's known as the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, the holy Or HaChaim, Rabbi Chaim Ibn Attar. He gives us a much deeper way of looking at Torah. And here we have one beautiful example of this type of exposition. Toba, please read text number 8.
If your brother shall become poor, etc. This section hints at what the Zohar says that God commanded the ministering angel Adon, who is the minister of negativity, not to treat Israel cruelly. And we are currently exiled to Adon.
First of all, this is unbelievable. Second of all, so timely. Third of all, wow. So what's he saying? What's the Or HaChaim saying? If your brother shall become poor. fallen on hard times, take him as a servant, but don't treat him badly. Says the Ar Chaim, this is a message to the nations of the world. When Jews are in a tight spot, right? When they're destitute, when things are a little bit tight, don't abuse them. Take it easy on them. With me on the message? That's the message, right? This is again, it says in Zohar's Kabbalah, this is a Kabbalistic insight. God commands the ministering angel of Edom. Edom is Esau, the brother of Jacob. Edom is considered to be the father of Rome, Western civilization. Rome is the nation that conquered Israel and destroyed the Second Temple nearly 2,000 years ago. We are currently exiled to Edom. We still haven't gotten out of that exile. God says to the ministering angel of Edom, Esau, the brother of Jacob, if your brother is, that's us. If your brother becomes poor, becomes destitute, falls on hard times, and they need your help, they go to you as a servant, etc. They're exiled in your country. Don't take advantage of that. You with me on this? It's powerful. It's powerful. Don't take advantage. Treat them nicely. Treat them kindly. So that's one thing. The one thing we need to know is that this story is not just about a personal scenario of somebody who falls into hard times, can't pay his bills, needs this as a last resort, does this and must be taken care of with integrity. This is also on a national level, on a larger level. We as a people are vulnerable and have been for 2,000 years. We've been wandering. And the message is to the nations of the world, starting with the angel of Edom, Esau's angel, the message is treat your brother kindly. Now, the next thing. The next thing is this. If this passage in Torah is talking not just about a person who needs money, etc., but it's talking about the Jewish people in exile, which we just said it also is, if that's the case. And now we're learning Torah not on Pshat, on the first level. We're learning now level 4. This is Kabbalah. You see what we did? A few weeks ago, like we went through different levels, progression. We started off on a simple level, and now we're talking about Kabbalah. Ministering angels, Edom, exile, Jewish people, history, etc. This is like level 4. But if that's what Torah is also speaking of, then we have another majestic, incredible idea. Remember we talked about the relation between parents and kids? Mm-hmm. That if the parent is taken as a servant, then the kids are also you're on the hook for the kids. And Toba asked me, is it vice versa? Remember you asked me? Would it work the other way around? If the kid is taken into exile, would the parent, would you also be on the hook for the parent? If the parent was connected, etc. And the answer is absolutely, because I don't know if technically, legally, if that would make sense, if the parent's an adult and can provide for themselves, but conceptually, if the child is taken servant, then it's going to affect the parent. And that's exactly what the Talmud teaches in text 9a, in one of the most moving passages of the Talmud. Take a look at text 9a. It is absolutely incredible. Text 9a. Are we up to me again? Did you just read it, Toba?
Yes.
Okay, text 9a, I'm going to read this. Tractate Megillah. And I look around and I see my good friend, Dr. J. And I think you've done Megillah, no? You've done Megillah a time or two.
Yes, 2 or 3 times.
There you go. Tractate Megillah. And by the way, everyone should learn from Jay. Study Talmud. Finish tractates. This is all right. So here we go. Text 9a, Tractate Megillah. Here's what the Talmud says. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, by the way, you know who that is? The same Rabbi Shimon as before that talked about parents and children being one. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, come and see how beloved the Jewish people are to the Holy One, blessed be He. Listen to this. For every place they were exiled, the divine presence went with them. They were exiled to Egypt. The divine presence went with them. As it stated, did I reveal myself to the house of your father when they were in Egypt? In other words, God says, I was there. They were exiled to Babylonia. The divine presence went with them. As it stated, for your sake, I have been sent to Babylonia, God says. So too, When in the future they will be redeemed, the divine presence will be with them. As it is stated, then God will return with your captivity. It does not say he will bring back the captivity, but rather he will return, teaching that the Holy One, blessed be he, will return with them from among the exiles. When the Torah speaks about the future redemption and the end to exile, it says God will return with your captivity. It doesn't say God will return those in captivity. He will return together with those in captivity, because God, as it were, is putting himself in exile with us, because a parent and a child are in it together. Text 9b from the Zohar. Again, Kabbalah. We went from Talmud to Kabbalah. That's how we roll here. So it was taught. Oh, by the way, who wrote the Zohar? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Same guy. This is now the third time. And same theme, parents and children, right? God and us, parents and children. So it was taught, fortunate is Israel. For in every place that they are exiled, the divine presence is revealed with them. Everywhere we go, God goes. That is what a parent does. A parent does not stay behind in safety, in comfort when the child is in captivity. Think about what's going on right now in Israel with the hostages. Think about what's going on. You don't think the parents are with the kids in captivity? I don't mean physically. You don't think they're thinking 24/7 about their child
Yes.
in captivity? Absolutely. What? They can sleep at night because they're safe? No way. The parents of hostages are absolutely not sleeping. They're not living. They're not living a normal life. Why? But it's not them, it's their children. It's their children. It's them. What do you mean it's their children? They are their children. Their children are them. It's one entity. This is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says. What, you think the Jewish people are in exile and what, God's playing golf? God's like, all right, I got a tennis match at 12, right? I got pickleball at 1. What is going on here? God is in exile with the Jewish people. When we are in Galus, in exile, God is in Galus with us. That's the way it works. Galus is the Hebrew word for exile. If we're in exile, God's in exile. That's the way it works. That's the teaching of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Speak about him, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. You know, let me tell you a quick biographical illustration about him, and you'll see why I think he was the guy that taught this. Now 3 times about parents and children. One about the servitude, one in the Talmud, and then one in the Zohar. All three, the 3 messages, same message 3 times. You know what happened with him? He was one of the students, one of the 5 students of Rabbi Akiva who survived the Great Plague. You know about this? Rabbi Akiva had 24,000 students who died. All 24,000 died in a plague. Not all. 24,000 of his students died in a plague. The plague took place between Pesach, Passover, and Shavuot. That's why this time of year is a small amount of mourning, Jewish mourning. Traditionally, we don't go to concerts. We don't have haircuts. We don't set weddings for this time of year. We try to minimize our joy because of this incredible loss of Jewish life and of Torah. 24,000 Rabbi Akiva, 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. 5 of his students survived. One of them was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the one that we've been quoting tonight. What happens? What happens is that he was not a fan of the Romans, and the Romans were not a fan of his. This is after the second temple's destruction. So the Jewish people were already displaced and in exile, and he wasn't happy. Amongst many others, Rabbi Shimon was not happy about the situation, and he was once complaining about the Roman authorities. There was a spy. The spy told Rome, and Rome put a hit out on, I don't know if that's the right word, but they put a warrant for the arrest and essentially execution. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he hid in a cave, the Talmud says. He hid in a cave for 13 years.
And he ate
carobs.
carrots.
He ate carobs.
Who's the son?
Oh,
Yeah.
who was in the cave? That's my point. Who was in the cave?
A large bear?
No
Yeah,
bears.
this
One
is-
second. Let's look at the facts.
Elijah?
Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai was in the cave, and his son Rabbi Elazar was in the cave. And I never thought of this question until tonight. Why was his son in the cave? Rabbi Akiva is the one who got in trouble with the Romans. Why was his son in the cave? To me, the answer is obvious. To me, it's if my dad's in the cave, I'm in the cave.
Be there. Right.
I'm going to be there. And that's why Rabbi Shimon says, you know what parents and children are like? They're with each other through thick and thin. If the child's in trouble, the parent's in trouble. If the parent's in trouble, the child's in trouble. I don't mean in trouble. I mean, if one's in a present situation, the other one feels it. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he lived it in his own life. He was exiled. His son goes with him. He and his son were inseparable, and he teaches about this inseparability, not only between biological parents and children, but also between us and God. We are God's children. And as such, if we are in pain, God is with us. This is unbelievable. Take a look at text 10. I'm going to read text 10. It's a bit of a long text, but it's beautiful. It's the way the Rebbe articulates this concept. Take a look. Simply protecting the Jewish people and every Jew individually during exile does not require the divine presence to be with them. In other words, let me just pause here and interject. The Rebbe is saying that why does God have to be with us in exile? He could be, up there and still take care of us from a distance. The same holds true of God's ability to redeem us from exile, as in like the days of your exodus from Egypt, I will show him wonders. Even if the Almighty had remained in heaven, allowing himself absolute freedom, he could have directed the world and protected the Jewish people everywhere. God is always the guardian of Israel who neither slumbers nor sleeps. And he provides for all their needs as he nourishes the entire world in his goodness with grace, kindness, and mercy. This alone would hasten our redemption. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the hero of tonight's class, says that God's love for the Jewish people makes this impossible. While they're in exile, the Almighty cannot allow himself to be in any state other than in exile with them. Again, it's what I said think about what's going on in Israel right now with the parents of the hostages. Yes, can they help if they're detached? Sure. But they can't be detached because that's my child. How could they ever be detached? It's not a choice. The Jewish people's experience of exile distresses him, God, as it were. For in all their pain, he was pain, Isaiah says, which means that he limits himself to their level of freedom. He is even present in their downfall, as he is there to live through, as it were, everything the Jewish people live through in exile. Rabbi Shimon goes even a step further, saying for every place they were exiled, the divine presence went with them. This means that God is, as it were, situated in exile, so much so that the divine presence went with them, subject to the exact circumstances of exile that the Jewish people fare. Essentially, what we've said until now, this is again emphasizing it, that God is with us through thick and thin in every situation. And it's not only us collectively, it's also individually, as the Rebbe continues, text 11. This is true, not only of the Jewish people as a whole, but of every individual Jew. In every place where a Jew is found in exile, in every land, whether outside the Holy Land in the United States or elsewhere, or even in our Holy Land, where exile's effect is deeply felt. In other words, even in Israel, where it's still exile. In every city, in every neighborhood, in every street, even far in the hinterlands. Hinterlands? That means, I think there's also a Yiddish expression. Where a single lonesome Jew is exiled, together with that Jew in every situation and circumstance, we find the Almighty God is found not just collectively with the Jewish people in exile, but individually with the Jew in exile, with the individual Jew wherever he or she may find themselves. What's the message? We've shared a lot of ideas, but there's one profound thought that comes to mind, and that is, the implication of all this. What the Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the hero of tonight's class, the one whose yard set is Lag BaOmer, the one who we celebrate on the 33rd day of the Omer. You know what the message is? The message is that wherever we are, God is with us, and that means we are never alone. God is our parent, we are his child, and that means wherever we are, even when we feel like we're alone, Torah tells us, through the law of the servant, through the teaching with regards to the spiritual meaning of that, the Torah is telling us that wherever we are not alone. We are never alone. God is always with us. It is the most empowering message that we can hear, especially today. We start off the class by talking about how, despite the digital proximity that we have sometimes feelings of emotional distance, spiritual distance. And what the Torah is teaching us and what the Rebbe is teaching us is that in truth, God is with us. And if we meditate on that, and if we feel that, then we are not alone. Text 12, very beautiful reading from Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik, the father of modern Orthodoxy. Take a look at what he writes. He wrote a book called The Lonely Man of Faith, about himself. He was lonely, and he wrote about his loneliness. Text 12. Sandrine, please take it away.
I am lonely because at times I feel rejected and thrust away by everybody, not excluding my most intimate friend and the word of the psalmist. My father and my mother have forsaken me, ring quite often in my ears like the plaintive cooing of the turtle dove.
He's writing very poetically. The plaintive cooing of the turtle dove. I don't even know exactly what that means. Is that what that means? All right. I guess he was around turtle doves and he heard that often. But his point is that, what rings in his ears is what King David writes in Psalms, my father and my mother have forsaken me. He feels alone. Here he is. He's a rabbi, a big rabbi, and he feels often alone. But that verse that he quoted, my father and my mother have forsaken me? You know how that verse ends? Yaakov, please read the ending of that verse, text 13.
For my father and mother have forsaken me, but God will gather me up.
That's the antidote to loneliness. When you feel alone, remember this. God will gather me up. God is with me. Sandrine, what was it?
Which psalm is it?
Yeah, Psalm 27. Yeah. So basically, David says, Ki avi v'imi azavoni. My father and mother have forsaken me. Now, how does that jive with today's class? Parents don't abandon their children. I don't know. You have to ask King David. That's maybe perception, not reality. But the point is, he says, despite whatever happens on the ground, God will gather me up. God is with me forever. That is the message of tonight's class. The message of tonight's class is that, in fact, we are really never alone. We might feel alone, but we're not alone. I have to read this text. And I know we're up to you, Toba, but I'm going to read it because it's a letter from the Rebbe. It's a little bit long, and I want to interject something. The Rebbe writes, I don't like this translation. A quick introduction before we jump into text 14. Very, very quick. The Rebbe received back in the day more mail on a daily basis and weekly basis than the President of the United States. This is before email, right? So this is before email. And so we're talking about everything was sent, old school snail mail. The Rebbe got more mail than the president. Apparently, people thought that they would get more value than writing to whoever is not a political statement, but whoever's in office, that's fine. But okay, if you want some answers and blessings, you write to 770 Eastern Parkway, the synagogue, the address of the Rebbe. The Rebbe answered thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of letters. The Rebbe's output, just on a physical level, is prolific, and I don't believe paralleled by anyone. I mean, it's going to be hard to say this. Hot take. You can fact check me, maybe. I don't know how to fact check this. I can't fathom another human being with more output. I'm talking about numbers of volumes published of their teachings, both spoken, the videos that exist, the letters. It's unbelievable. Here, the Rebbe writes to a young man, replies to a young man who wrote a letter to the Rebbe about his feelings of loneliness. This young man says he's feeling lonely, and here's the Rebbe's response. And the English translation is not great, because the beginning of this, Ma bechlal inyan habedidut. What type of loneliness? What loneliness are you talking about? He's not screaming at him, but he's saying, what kind of loneliness? The translation here is, what in fact is loneliness? It's not a philosophical question. The Rebbe's reply, this guy says, I feel lonely. He says, what kind of lonely? At this very moment, and here's why. At this very moment, behold, God stands above you, and though the whole earth is full of his glory, he scans your mind and heart to see whether you are serving him properly. Now, that sounds maybe creepy, but the point of this is to say that though God is the master of the entire universe, he also cares about you individually. In that same chapter of Tanya, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, immediately, the founder of Chabad, immediately leads us to the logical conclusion of this. If so, one ought to serve him, and one ought to meditate deeply on this thought and at length. if you put in effort meditating on this conclusion, you will immediately see that you are not lonely. Quite the contrary. In other words, how can you be lonely if God is with you? And if if you don't feel that God is with you, well, then there's a solution. So you got to meditate on that to the point where you feel that God is with you. Study the parts of Torah that speak about this, right? Look around at the world around you. Think about the divine providence in your life. Think about how God has helped you and blessed you. Look around a little bit, start feeling that, and then you won't feel lonely. Now, I'm not suggesting that there's a magic button. Oh, God's with me. Boom, I'm not lonely anymore. It's a process. I'm not trying to minimize the process, but there is a solution at hand. In other words, there is a resolution at hand, because in truth, we are not alone objectively. God is with us. But I do want to conclude with one more piece. I had the opportunity this past weekend to be the keynote speaker at Shabbat in the Heights, the national, and even there was some international JLI, Jewish Learning Institute, Shabbaton in Crown Heights in Brooklyn, New York, about 500 people there. I had the opportunity to address the crowd in the Rebbe synagogue on Friday afternoon. And then again, I addressed the group on Shabbat afternoon a few times, and then Sunday morning. And it was a powerful weekend, and there's a lot to unpack and talk about, but not for right now. But one thing I want to mention is I'll just share with you one thing that I said Friday afternoon.
It's recorded.
It was recorded. Yes, they were recorded. They had cameras and everything, multiple cameras and video. I haven't seen it, but we can get it. Yeah, I'll ask my contacts in HQ. So here's the thing. In 1972, Yitzhak Rabin, Yitzhak Rabin, who would later become the Prime Minister of Israel. Yitzhak Rabin was then Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. And in 1972, Zalman Shazar, the president of Israel, sent Rabin together with a small delegation to Crown Heights to visit the Rebbe, on the occasion of the Rebbe's 70th birthday. He turned 70 in 1972. He was born in 1902. On the occasion of his birthday, so Rabin and others come in to bring greetings and regards and good wishes for the Rebbe's birthday. Okay, they have a meeting. And in the meeting, the Rebbe tells Rabin the following. So there's a verse in Torah, it actually comes from the prophecy of Balaam, the evil prophet, who wanted to curse the Jewish people, and his curses ended up as blessings. He says like this, this nation, he says, is alone and is not counted among the nations. The Jewish people are alone and they're not counted amongst the other nations. And the Rebbe turns to Rabin and says, you might think this is a curse, but we know that everything that he said was actually a blessing. Israel always wants to be normalized, right? Finally normalized like every other nation on earth, just to be normal like everyone else. But for some reason, despite all the attempts over the last, 75 years, 76 years to be normal, for some reason, it's the only nation we're still not sure about. We, meaning the world community, said, well, we're not sure if you should really exist. No one's ever called into the question the existence of Russia. So, you don't like Russia, maybe they shouldn't exist. We don't even think along those terms. Like maybe North Korea shouldn't exist. No one says that, right? No one says maybe America shouldn't exist. No one says that. Israel, we're not sure. We're not sure. People are not sure. People are still voting on whether they think Israel should or shouldn't exist. Why not? Why can't we be normal like everyone else? The Rebbe said, this is 1972. The Rebbe said to Rabin, he said, Israel's aloneness is not necessarily a curse. It might be a blessing. Because what it means is that we are unique and we are different. And everyone realizes that and everyone knows that. And we're not normal like everyone else. We have our own way of doing things and people recognize that. And sometimes they like it. Sometimes it rubs them the wrong way. But the Jewish people are one nation on earth that is a little bit different. What it also means, the Rebbe was telling this to Rabin, a guy who really wanted everything to be nice and secular and normal. The Rebbe was telling him, look, you can try despite your best efforts, you may find yourself, isolated by the world, which again, we find ourselves once again now. But either way, look at it as an opportunity to be who you are, to stand for what you stand for, and to not have to give in to the way others see things. And I'm not speaking specifically about anything political or war related. I'm speaking
But
as far as
Rabin didn't take that advice.
well, that's why the Rebbe said it to him, because he knew his customer. Rabin grew up as a secular Jew on a kibbutz about just becoming, he wants secular Zionism, wanted to be normal like everyone else, and dropped the whole uniqueness and they're always telling him there's something special about being unique, something special about being different, and we should celebrate. In general, by the way, when we think about diversity and everything, the greatest thing is to celebrate individuality, not to try to suppress it. What somebody once said, we're meant to make a chicken soup, not a cholent. There's a difference between a cholent and a chicken soup. You got to. First of all, you got to know the terms. Chicken soup is easy. That we all know. What's a cholent? The cholent is the traditional Jewish food that you eat on Shabbat afternoon because you're not cooking on Shabbos. You put it up before Shabbos and it continues to cook on its own until the next day. All right. So that cholent, when you open up the pot, you put potatoes and meat or whatever, kishka in there, whatever, sweet potatoes and spices and beans and barley. You open it up. No matter. Everything tastes the same. The barley and the potato and the meat, they all have the same flavor. Nothing, it's all the same color, it's all the same texture, it's all the same flavor. It's like, oh, I got a potato. Really? It doesn't. It could also be a kidney bean for that matter. It doesn't make a difference. A chicken soup is different. A chicken soup, everything stays. Its color, it has a unique texture. You got your matzo ball, you got your carrot, you got your zucchini. Everything stays its own. Everything stays a little distinct. We called America the melting pot. Maybe that was a mistake. I don't know. Who am I to decide? So melting pot means leave your distinction behind and blend. I don't know if that's a great idea. That's not good. That doesn't honor anyone's traditions. You have to check your individuality at the door and just become average. Who does that help? Judaism says, no, be different. By the way, the Jewish notion of being proud of who you are is meant to then also be a light unto the nations, that everybody, America, the chicken soup. Exactly. Thank you, Matt. Right. Instead of the melting pot, it should be the chicken soup. That's the new motto for the country. It just hasn't rolled out yet. It's coming soon to a slogan near you, right? Campaign slogan or national slogan. Uncle Sam, come enjoy the chicken soup. Here's the point. The Jewish people from the beginning, God tells us, the Torah tells us, it's in the Bible, everyone's got a copy, or you can find one pretty easily, right? The Bible says, you are a nation alone. Balaam says, you're a nation alone, etc. And the message is, don't be ashamed to be different. You don't have to, like our mothers would always say, what, if Bobby would jump off the Empire State Building, you would also jump off the Empire State Building? What's the message? You could be different. It's okay. You could be a little bit different. It's not so bad. It's not so bad to be alone. And so today we talked about being alone. And there's two messages. Number one, you're never alone. God is with you. And number two, it's okay to be alone in this context of standing up for your values and not having to and not feeling the need to compromise on your core just to placate someone else. And if we walk through life with these two values, the confidence that God is with us and the confidence to be true to ourselves, then I think we'll be doing well. Thank you very much for joining me tonight for Torah Studies. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. I'm kidding. Hope you all enjoyed the class. And next week, for those that are local and can join us in person, you are greatly invited to join us. It's so much fun right here. It's so much fun everywhere, but it's also fun here. And so join us live and local right here at High Point Road in Sandy Springs. Otherwise, any other announcements? Tomorrow night we have Decisions of Fate, our medical ethics course. If you haven't jumped on that yet, it's a 4-part series. It's not too late. You can jump on. You can even try it out. If you want to try, you don't have to sign up or register. Try it out a class, see if you like it. Just email me, text me, and I will hook you up with that. Information. What else is coming up? We got some Lag BaOmer. Oh, holy cow. Sunday, Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer is Sunday. See, Yaakov. And that is so it starts Saturday night, Jewish day starts at night. It's a thing. So Saturday night begins Lag BaOmer. It goes to Sunday night. It's Saturday night, Sunday. Sunday itself is Lag BaOmer. Sunday, there is a massive parade and festival. Oh, yeah. 1 second. Let me pull up. Oh, no, here. First time ever in Atlanta. Absolutely. Yes. Hold on. My phone's on 2% battery. Talk about anxiety. Give me 1 second here. Hold on. 1 second. Stay with me, guys. Stay with me. How do I find this? Which chat would this be on? Let's presume it is on this chat. The great parade. I got it. Boom. Can't see a thing. Oh, wow. All right, here we go. I'm going to send it to you WhatsApp. Absolutely. Here we go. I'm going to read information for those that are interested. Great Parade, Lag BaOmer. Jewish Unity Parade, Marching for Israel. It is 4:30 p.m. this Sunday. Wow. That's this Sunday. Unbelievable. 4:30 p.m. is the parade. Parade begins at the Chabad Israeli Center in Dunwoody.
Chambly Dunwoody Road.
Dunwoody Road, yes. Right down the street from JFCS. Beautiful center.
The B'nai Ruvain?
B'nai Ruvain, yes. Parking and parade begins at 4:30. At 4360 Chambly Dunwoody. That must be right down the street. I'm not sure what that location is. If anybody wants this flyer, just text me or email me and I'll send it to them. 4360 Chambly Dunwoody Road. That's where the parking and parade begins. It goes for 30 minutes. Oh, by the way, a parade. Oh, I know everyone's thinking, what kind of parade? Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, floats and whatnot. We have, again, this is the first time Atlanta has seen this. Huh? Chicago has this. Yeah, my kids are making floats now. Oh, I'm like, Mendel, how's yeshiva? Because I have 2 kids in yeshiva in Chicago. We're building floats. I'm like, great, this is fun. They're building floats here in the school. Huh?
Chicago, Lag BaOmer?
Yeah. I mean, they're going to be there.
Talking about Thanksgiving.
Oh, Thanksgiving. Oh, in Chicago. I'm talking about Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is the new Thanksgiving. It's the new thing. Anyway, just keep it brief. There's floats being made. It's going to be amazing. And it's 30 minutes, it's an hour parade, 4:30 to 5:30. 5:30 is the carnival and barbecue, followed by a concert and bonfire in honor of the day. There's a parade, carnival, teen zone, delicious barbecue, live concert, huge bonfire with an Israeli singer. I mean, what else? What else do you need? Wow. Fun for the whole family, fun for adults, fun for kids. So if you have kids, don't have kids, it's fun for all of them. Yeah, you don't need to go to parents. We got it right here. All right, so take a look. I don't know the website. Let me just take one more quick look at this. It's not okay. If you want more information online, you can go to, but now you have to remember this link. CIC Atlanta, Chabad Israeli Center Atlanta. CIC Atlanta.com/Lag BaOmer.
So is it ending there at the CIC or?
I'm assuming. I'm assuming it's kind of right down the street. I'm assuming it's not going to go like on the 285. That would not. The floats would probably not survive that, as the kids are making them. So it's going to be very cute and very meaningful. And it's going to go down the street over there, Chambly Dunwoody Road, 4:30 to 5:30. Carnival, barbecue, concert, bonfire, and just a great afternoon, evening of Jewish Unity and Jewish Pride. Great way to celebrate. So,
Rabbi Ari,
don't forget Rabbi Shimon. Yeah.
I brought Kay, Danny, and Rosalie tonight.
Jay,
got a crew.
You
gotta get Jules and Richie back.
All right. Well, what's gonna happen? Maybe tomorrow night.
And Renee.
Oh, and Renee. Oh, Sandrine says and Renee. Oh, here we go.
That's great class.
That's right. That's right. All right. We'll see you guys. Lila Tov, everybody. Lehitraot, and we will see you all tomorrow. Why not? Come back tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel, 7:30. Okay. See you guys.
Thank you.
Pleasure,
We got
pleasure.
Lo Yanun Lo Ishan.
That's right.
Are
See
you
you guys.
having